Good evening, everyone. My name is Lean Abdelaziz, and I'm a Senior Program Analyst here with the National Association for City and Health Officials. I'm with the preparedness team, but I'm also part of the Alexandria MRC unit. So I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and I'm a volunteer here with Alexandria. My background, I was with CDC as a public health advisor for 5 years. And during my 5 years, 3 of that 5 years, I was with Virginia Department of Health as a field assignee, meaning that for that 3 years, I was loaned to the Virginia Department of Health to help them with their preparedness activities, respond, and whatever they needed me, training, exercise, whatever they needed from me for those 3 years. So I worked with those folks here, Kate and Edwina. So I'm happy today to come back and present. I presented actually this topic during COVID, right at the beginning of COVID for our volunteers. So some of this information might be not new to some of you, so bear with me. We might not take the full an hour and a half, so it might be a quick, maybe an hour type of presentation today and training. All right, so we'll move along. Oh, and with NATESHO, what I do actually, I'm part of the MRC team. So we at NATESHO, we support local MRC units that we have around the country, and we make sure we support them with grants money. We also support them with training, develop trainings for MRC unit leaders. We also do workshops. Matter of fact, I have a workshop next week with some of the MRC unit leaders in the southern states. So we go around the country too to train unit leaders. So hopefully today this training will be beneficial, and will take you along with me.
Hey, Lane, before we get started, can you just slow down just a little bit for the folks? Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, so what we're going to learn today, after this today's session, you should know a little bit about the Strategic National Stockpile. You should know what's the difference between the state and local dispensing systems that we have here in Virginia. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about point of dispensing operation structures, which is the pods. And we're going to talk about also give you some examples of the role of volunteers during an MCM operations. And what we mean by MCM, it's actually medical countermeasures operations. All right, so we're going to start today's session by just giving you an overview highlight of what we mean by the Strategic National Stockpile, or SNS. So objectives for this section, we're going to talk about the Strategic National Stockpile, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between the state and local in terms of dispensing medication or administering vaccines. All right, so what do we mean when we say the Strategic National Stockpile, the SNS? So SNS is a nation's supply of life-saving pharmaceuticals and medical supplies managed by the USA Department of Health and Human Services, and we use stockpiles during public health emergencies. Basically, the stockpile was actually under CDC until 2019, and then it was transferred to ASPR, which is the Assistance for Preparedness and Response here in DC. So it's a new agency. They're running the SNS, and they're actually the one who are doing it during COVID. So the SNS caches are strategically located in secured warehouses across the United States. They put them in places that is easy access. Either there is a railways around, or there is an airport, or there is a highway that will be easy transfer those caches to the affected areas, or the areas where they're needed. Because sometimes they activate the Strategic National Stockpile not just for public health emergencies. Let's say there's a hurricane and there's some, let's say 3 states they've been affected. Sometimes they activate that and they send them some supplies from the Strategic National Stockpile. So it depends on the situation, and it depends. It's a direction from HHS when to activate the Strategic National Stockpile. All right, so these are some of the things that is inside the stockpile, and you can see this is an actual picture from a warehouse where we as per store the SNS caches. So we have PPE, which is personal protective equipments. We have ventilators. We have airways management, and then we have pharmaceuticals like pills, vaccines, and then we have testing supplies as well. And there's beds. There is a lot of things with the stockpile, but these are the top caches or top things that we have inside the Strategic National Stockpile. So how the SNS works? And these are actual, this is an actual picture from a warehouse, and this is how the stockpile, this is how the container look when they arrive to the state warehouse, because they normally transfer from the SNS to the state and then to localities. So the state governors request the deployment of the SNS assets. So the request has to come straight from the state governor. And normally by that time, they probably declare the public health emergency. And then they go through a proper channel through HHS and ASPR to request the SNS. So the initial deployments is 12-hour. This is what they call it, push packages. Basically, push packages has everything or a little bit of everything, and they just push it because at that time they don't know exactly the needs of that community or that jurisdiction. So they just send what is called the push packages. And actually, the hours for the push packages been lowered. So now they say between 6 to 8 hours they can get those containers to the state. Specific or additional medicines managed by inventory supplies are delivered within 24 to 36 hours. So for example, if there's a particular vaccine, there is a particular things that that jurisdiction need and is not available at the warehouses or with the stockpile, it takes about 24 to 36 hours for those medications to be for the states to receive those medications. All right, so these are actual pictures. Sometimes they use airplanes to deliver those stockpiles, and you can see they break it down here. It depends on the emergency. Sometimes volunteers help. Sometimes we involve the National Guard. So it just depends how large the emergency is or the response is. All right, so I'll tell you a little bit about between the difference between the role that the state plays here. Where we mean the state, we mean Virginia Department of Health, and localities, we mean the local health departments. Or so at the state level, which is VDH, what they do, first of all, they request it through the governor. After they request it, they receive the impact, they store and secure and distribute the local jurisdiction and the state governors. Meaning the role of the Virginia Department of Health is basically on distribution. That's their main role, is distribution. And then they do the public communication and public information, sharing the information with the public. You know, there's vaccines available here where you can go and get it, all that work that done just to inform the public there is something coming up. The local health department, what they do, they receive and secure whatever the medication, if it's pills, if it's vaccine, they secure it so they can send it to the dispensing, which is what we call it, point of dispensing. So they send necessary MCM in a timely and efficient manner. So sometimes this process all happens within 12 hours from the time the state requested to receive it to send it to localities. And we ask localities, the state asks localities to be ready within 48 hours from that notification there is something coming up. Meaning open the pods and have it ready with 48 hours, not receiving, not putting, not, no, actually have it open to the public within 48 hours. And also another role of the local health department, the public communication and information. They send information. You've seen that during COVID, there was a lot of communication coming out of the local health departments, the state health department, here where you can go, you get your vaccine, here's some side effects, here who's the priority list, so all that information. This is a role between the local and the state health department. All right, so we have a different dispensing system in the state of Virginia. Each state has its own planning in terms of dispensing or medical countermeasure dispensing in general. They have their own plans based on their needs, based on jurisdiction size, based on their resources, based on their partners that they have. In Virginia, we have two type of systems. We have what we call it closed pot, closed point of dispensing, and these are government places like departments, jails, correction facilities, private hospitals, churches, companies, big companies. Basically, what we mean by a closed spot is the Virginia Department of Health will send the medication straight to those area or those departments or jails or hospitals. That we want them to take care of their own people. For example, Virginia Department of Health has an MOU with Dominion Power. So we know that if there is an emergency, Dominion Power knows that we're gonna deliver the medication to them, and they're gonna give the medication or the vaccines to their own people, because we know Dominion Power is an essential services, and we want to make sure that they've been taken care of, and Dominion agreed that they can take care of their people so they can continue working during disasters or emergencies. Another example that we have a lot of MOUs with jails and correction facilities. If during COVID, we've been sending them the vaccines, they've been, I don't know if some of you were involved, MRC were involved in jails or dispensing the medications or giving vaccines, but we also do have MOUs with jails, and then also churches and big hospitals as well. When we do something like that, because that's going to take a lot of burden and a lot of manpower, that local health department can also can focus on the public. So when they take care of their own people, then this is it'll help us, and they help also those employees to go back to their work and provide the essential services that we want them to provide. I just want to mention also, we provide the medication not just to them, but to them and to their families. So Dominion Power will send us a list of their employees and their families, their significant others, their children, because we know also those people, we don't want them to worry about getting medication or vaccines to their people during emergencies. If they know their families are taken care of, then they'll be able to go and do the essential work. These are just some of the examples that we have with close spots. We have with so many governments and private entities, and we welcome those MOUs all the time. The second type of dispensing system, that's probably a lot of you were either gone there to take their vaccines or been part of the MRC, the volunteers that help running those pods. So pod sites include public schools, sports arena, gymnasium, community centers, and you've seen also during COVID, we did some drive-through pods, and then we do mass vaccination clinics where thousands of people also line up, and you saw that also during COVID. And then pharmacies too. We consider pharmacies open pods, and we have Virginia Department of Health, actually one of the first states that had MOUs with pharmacies, so we can distribute pharmacies during emergencies. Even before COVID, we had this MOU signed. We know that during emergencies, pharmacies will help us to dispense to the public, and that happened during COVID. You saw a lot of Walgreens, Walmart, most pharmacies, they were able to dispense the vaccines. We didn't have MOUs with all of them. We had only with two chain, but then everybody else come after COVID, and they decided to get involved because they saw the benefit of helping their communities and their areas. All right, so I'm gonna stop here. That's a lot of information. If there's any questions in the chat, I know, Adrina, if you want to read it to me, because I can't really see the chat.
Hey, Lean, I did get one question. How much larger is today's SNS compared to the SNS in 2019?
I don't know if it's going to be large in terms of, but the way they do things is different. Because during COVID-19, the vaccines did not come out of the stockpile straight. It came from all these companies that you guys were hearing about. So I think now moving forward in the future, it's not going to be about the size, but it's going to be about how they can get the medications or the vaccines as fast. Probably now I'm sure they're going to come up with new guidelines, especially COVID changed a lot of things. As I said, they work directly with the manufacturer, they work directly with those pharmaceutical companies, and those pharmaceutical companies, they did not even go through they went through the SNS, but the vaccines were sent straight to the state and then to localities. So there was a lot of changes during COVID, and I'm sure there will be some guidelines coming out after COVID.
Okay, great. So we got two more questions, and we did get a couple more requests for you to slow down just a little bit.
Guilty of that, I know.
I know, I do it too. Okay, so what would happen if the stocked reagents or vaccine expires?
So we, CDC, ASPR, and FDA work together to extend the life shelf of these medications, and some of them rotate. So they take the medication out, and then they put new medications.
Okay. Will the new COVID vaccines go into the stockpile, do you think?
Probably not, because it came straight from a pharmaceutical company. So it's probably going to be uh, used as a commercial type of vaccine, similar to the flu. You know, when you go, your insurance will pay, or you know, so that's how it's going to be probably.
Okay. Is let's see. We talked about keeping it in date. So they do typically things that expire, they do rotate out. And then going back to the question about it being larger. So, and I kind of I understood the, like, number of masks as an example of size. So like, would there be more things? You think there are more things in there now, or?
Yes. Yeah. So I was just in a conference 2 weeks ago, and they talked about this the head of that division, which is the Strategic National Stockpile with ASPR. They talk about changing things, and they might be adding stuff, they might be taking stuff out. So they're changing the whole operation, and they're doing a lot of changes based on the needs and the lesson learned from COVID.
Yeah, I'm sure they learned a lot from COVID. Is there one location for the SNS or multiple locations?
Oh, so many locations. They put it strategically within a highway or airport or trail, so they can easily move around. So there is probably one within. They told us that Virginia has a very close one by, so we can even get it within 4 hours. They said so. It depends, and we don't know the location. So state localities, we're not aware. Even me, when I was with CDC, I did not. The location were not disclosed to us.
Um, let's see. Does the jurisdiction decide how they distribute, or does ASPR set the guidelines?
So the federal ASPR set the guidelines, but jurisdiction also have rights to say whatever they want to say. They have the guidelines as well. For COVID, it was a little bit different because it's a national emergency, and there was so it was a national emergency, was declared throughout the United States. So that's why ASPR and HHS has a lot of say. But Kate can tell you here, Virginia has its own regulations, even who can vaccinate. Virginia has its own rules, has its own, stuff that they do. So each state has its own what is called, like whatever they need, however they want to dispense it. This is on their own. The federal government does not dictate that.
Is the smallpox vaccine still in the SNS? Are we
It's
allowed
still
to know
there.
that?
It's still there. Yes, it's still there. Yes.
If you all are having trouble hearing, you can always turn on the captions. It's down in the left corner, and you'll be able to read along with her. What is ASPR? Is preparedness? What is it?
You're almost there. So it's the Assistant for Preparedness and Response, and
Assistant.
now it's an agency. Yeah, it was assistant like 2 months ago. Now they actually become an agency by itself. So they're gonna have their own. Um, they report directly to HHS. Then they can have a secretary that report directly. So they changing also the operation
Yes, Mike got it right. Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response.
and respond. Yeah, thank you.
Who is in charge of funding maintenance of the SNS?
Federal government, HHS, they receive Congress money yearly to maintain and sustain the SNS.
Oh, the people who work for the SNS daily, who are they employed by?
It used to be CDC, as I said, 2019, that changed to ASPR. So the whole division was moved with the employees, they've been moved to ASPR. The logistics personnel, they have people who work with data, so they have all type of sort of people with them, MDs, pharmacists, whoever you name it, they're there with them. It's a huge team.
So here's another question. So the locations of the SNS are secret, but then sometimes volunteers are deployed to help with distribution
Distribution in the state and local.
once it gets to the state. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So even the state, we don't go to their federal warehouses. So they send it to us at the state level, and at the state level, that's when we ask volunteers to come to help, or at the local. It depends on the plan of the state. I'm not sure what the plan right now.
Great. And just to address the question about the slides, we are recording this, and this recording will be posted on the training calendar page within probably next week. Are these agencies all connected?
Yes, they're all connected, and actually the state have a one number to call. So there is a desk there that all states knows that number, and they call that desk, and then everything routed. Everybody will be waking up if there is an emergency. So yeah, all connected.
Great. These are awesome questions. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. All right, we move along. I can move my slide. All right. So the next part of today's presentation, we're going to talk about point of dispensing, which is we call it POD. So for this section, we're going to understand public health emergency that require pod activations. We're going to describe the type, the purpose, and functions of pods. We're going to also talk a little bit about PODS operation, meaning how we can prepare volunteers and city staff and local health departments for non-medical position within PODS. So today we're going to talk about non-medical position in particular. All right, so some of the dispensing scenarios. The HHS ASPER, this is some of the scenarios, but there's so many scenarios that they can activate the SNS. It's basically, think about it's the cash that's saved by the federal government for the state and localities to use. So whenever they need it, even if it's a smaller type of need still, and there is no vaccine or medication are not in the market, nobody cannot buy it. Like for example, the anthrax vaccines, it's within the strategic national stockpile. So some of those things that we know, even if it's a one case or two case, they can still activate the SNS just to get those folks that particular vaccine. So some of the scenarios, man-made incidents like bioterror attack, small or large. If you remember the mails that were received in DC for anthrax threats, and then there is also the public health events, natural events like diseases like we just happened with COVID, monkeypox, whatever outbreaks we have out there. And then emerging infections like COVID-19, but there is actually a core in diseases that if there's a vaccine shortage, sometimes the SNS will support that. So these are just a couple of scenarios. All right, so public health emergency that require a point of dispensing, anthrax, plague, smallpox, and pandemics and emerging infections like H1N1 back in 2009 or COVID-19. All right, so responding to a public health emergency, what we mean by we saying, okay, there is a public health emergency. It's actually the ability to provide medical countermeasures in support of treatment or prophylaxis to the identified population in accordance with public health guidelines and or recommendations. So basically, anytime that we feel like the public needs medical countermeasures, that's what we call it a public health emergency. All right, so this is an example of a pod, how the pod is set up. This is just a simple example. It could be stretched to so many roles and responsibilities. It could be a small pod that they're going to have only 200 people coming by, or it could be thousands of people. So there's always a pod manager, and he's going to have, or she going to have a public health information officer, somebody taking care of the media, somebody if there's a questions, somebody outside taking pictures or whatever. So that person will be there to support any needs. There will be a safety officer. That safety officer will be responsible of making sure the location is safe, there is no hazard, just making sure that if there is exits, there is people know how to exit, how to enter. So that safety officer will be taking care of that. Knowing where is the near hospital, just in case if anything happens, be in touch maybe with EMS, just in case if there is something, he knows where to call. And then there is a biosafety officer that depends on the actual emergency. And then you see here to the right, to the left, let's say, start with the left, logistics. That person will be a logistics supervisor. And that person could be a runner, could be somebody who's taking care of IT. So it could be somebody who's taking care of food. So logistic, they will do a lot of things. They're making sure materials and everything is being received, set up, and all that. So you can see yourself in so many of these different roles. So after then we have the clinical supervisor. There's normally somebody there who's a doctor. It could be a local health department or somebody from the state, or it could be a volunteer who has an MD who licensed that could be there to supervisor if there is a questions. And then vaccinators. You saw a lot of vaccinators and you saw a lot of volunteers also be trained to be vaccinators. And then we have vaccinator assistants. They can help them maybe with the forms, making sure everything is checked. And then there is a medical evaluation. Somebody will be there also to check after they wait for their maybe 10 minutes after they receive the vaccine. Somebody will be there just to monitor that. Then we have a clinical clerk supervisor. That person will be taking care of all the form distribution, reviewing the form, making sure everything is being checked and you have enough forms and all that. And then we have the flow control supervisor. Somebody would be in charge of making sure people are entering right, exiting right. There's a greeter, there's somebody who screen folks, the flow inside, the flow outside, the traffic. So that person will be there. And then support services, they do so many things. Could be interpreter, could be an outreach person, it could be somebody from mental health. So as I said, this is just an example. This list can grow, this list could be shorter. Some of these positions might not be filled. So it depends on the needs of that pod and who they need to run that pod. And it could be all volunteers. It could be some of it volunteers. So it depends also on the needs of that local jurisdiction. All right, I've been talking about pod, but what is pod? So pod, point of dispensing, is a site where medication or vaccine intended to prevent disease may be given quickly to a large number of people. And we saw that during COVID, they were giving a lot of vaccines to so many people on the line. So it could be that, or it could be an isolated incident, like the anthrax incident, for example. It was only people around that area, maybe the DC area, maybe those offices that they needed the anthrax vaccine. So that pod was probably within that area and maybe had 20, 30, 50 people. So it depends. And the primary goals of pod is to triage folks, medicate, give them whatever medication or vaccine, then educate them too. You've seen in those pods, they give you a brochure or they give you something to you learn about the medication or even the disease that you're giving the medication for. And then secondary goals, also we want to put behavioral health as one of the top priority. We want to make sure people are mentally, they're okay, they're not in stress. So we look at those signs too. And then record keeping, because everything we have to report back to CDC and ask for how many doses been used and how many people came through the pod. So all that record keeping, there's systems that we connect directly. Somebody asked earlier if there's a connection. There is also a system actually to report those vaccines directly up to the federal level as per or CDC. All right, so what's the difference between a pod and a clinic? The clinics, this is your regular clinics. You go, they take their time. This is your doctor, the doctor that you know. They go through your medical history, exams, your records. They're only individually focused and time consuming. And traditionally, it's in a healthcare setting, a clinic or a hospital or urgent care. And then it's run by medical professionals. The pod, normally there is no exam needed. It's very limited records. You've seen those forms. We don't ask a lot of questions because it's an emergency. We want as many people as to prevent disease or prevent injury, whatever we need to do to keep people safe. So that's why it's short. Even the forms is not a long form like when you go to a doctor office. And it's very population focused. We want to get as much people through the line. We want to make sure people are safe. So it's population focused. And then process client as quickly as possible, as I said. Is normally in a community-based setting. So it could be in, as we said earlier, in a school, in a church, in a parking lot, whatever we can get people to come and take the medication, or it could be in a pharmacy, like what happened during COVID. And then here, normally we have non-medical, non-traditional staff. Could be volunteer, could be mixed. As I said earlier, it depends on the needs. All right. In terms of pod, we have two different kind of pod. We have non-medical model pod, which is we give all antibiotics, and then no medical license is required, so any volunteer can work on those pods. And then we dispense it normally to the head of the household. So only one person can pick the medication. I mean, um, that will save all time, and that will save also the line won't be long. So we ask the head of the household, they fill out the form. The form will list all the people living with them, and also they can pick up for their neighbors too. If they have an elderly neighbors that they want to pick up the medication for, they can do that. That's for non-medical pod. For medical pod, and this is what happened during COVID, it's vaccines. So these are injections, and we need definitely medical license required. Uh, and then each member of the household must come to the pod, obviously, so they can take their vaccine. All right, these some of the policies. The policies change based also on the operation, based on the mission, and based on that particular jurisdiction as well. Normally, we don't ask for photo ID, especially for pills. And then we ask for full name, date of birth, phone number, addresses, and basic allergy information, just so we can monitor if there is any adverse effects after the emergency ends. And then some of the policy in terms of media, they can access the pod, but we normally don't give them like greater access. And then they follow some rules and might be removed if they don't follow these rules. So if you see something like that happen in a pod, you can always go to the pod manager or go to the safety person or even go to the PIO, the public information officer, and ask for their assistance. If somebody's asking question, media, they come, they want to know how the operation is going, you can always direct them to the right person. And normally the pod manager is the perfect person to answer the questions, direct them to the appropriate folks that they can talk to. All right, so this is just to give you an example also of the health department operation, how they set up the operation. The health director is always the public health incident commander or his deputy, depends. And then they initiate your unified command. So it's the health director is the one who decide who to bring to the table. Let's say it was a COVID, so he might decide to bring folks within the health department that they don't work in preparedness or respond, but some of the people who work with immunization, some folks who work with child clinics, whatever other people that he feels the needs that they be there because they're subject matter expert in that particular respond or a mission. And then request normally support from cooperating agencies. Like, for example, he has an MOU with the high school and they know that they're going to open a pod in the high school. He will reach out to those partners and ask them, hey, just a heads up, we're planning to activate and this is the time that we might be there. And then work with other, community members or community partners, if there's any needs, if he needs maybe some security around the pod, so he can call the local police or the sheriff office, ask them for that. He can reach out to, they need more volunteers or he need whatever he needs. That's the time that to request it when he start activating the operation. And then here that also to answer another question early, determine the dispensing protocol. So the health director will have the right to say, okay, we're going to dispense in this area, we're going to do this here. So they decide if it's going to be a medical pod, non-medical pod. Most health directors are MDs, at least here in Virginia. So they determine what type of pod. These are all decisions based on the subject matter expertise, the folks around that health director, whatever. And then also they reach out to the state for any recommendation or any guidelines as well. All right, so our response time, this is general. COVID, we learned a lot, but this is what we have in our plans and we think that is going to happen. So a decision, first of all, we start with the incidents here to the left. An incident occurs. It could be a small incident in, let's say, Alexandria. An incident occurred in Alexandria. The director of the health department here decided to dispense countermeasures, decided there is a need for dispensing countermeasures. Let's put a scenario. Maybe there is a chemical spill. Simple, several people work in a factory, something happened to them. Health department decided that they want to activate the pods. This is not SNS now. This is just pod. They have medications, they have vaccines, they need to give to those affected population. So they start the logistic mobilization, meaning, as I said earlier, reaching out to those partners, making sure everything is ready, reaching out to the employees, reaching out to the MRC unit leader. Hey, we might activate, we might need volunteers. So all that happening uh, internally at the local health departments. A lot of people, reach out here and there to get everything ready. And then so after after that they start roasting staff and then deployment the pod kits from the storage, whatever that storage is, to the actual pod, and then the staff report to the staging area. um, they check in and then they receive briefing normally from the pod manager, and then some of them they might meet at the local health department in transport, some of them might meet straight at the pod. Here you can see SNS push packages being delivered to the warehouse in Virginia, the state level, and then goes to the localities and then to the open pod, and then we open for dispensing. So this is actually, when I look at it now, this is an SNS push package. So let's start from here again. It's local health departments. There is an incident decision made by the health department. There is a need for activation of SNS. He calls the state. The state will call HHS as per. Then all the logistics will start. We start rostering staff, we start deploying the kits, and then they start reporting to the staging side. SNS push package is being received from the state, is coming to the local health department. Sometimes it goes straight to the pods, and some local health department, they have a smaller warehouse that they like their stuff to be delivered there. So it depends from local health department to a local health department. And then that site is being opened. So tips for being a pod team leader. Let's say there was a needs and they call you and you decided to be a team lead. These are some tips that we heard from volunteers. Be proactive if there is a problem before it starts. Find it and then pay attention to your staff needs. Make sure they get proper breaks. They ate something. They're okay. Check on them, and then be transparent if you see anything, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Meaning, if you see something that needs to be done, go to speak to pod manager, or just be proactive and take the lead. We want you guys to lead and become team leaders. All right, so the pod operations, primary goals, as we said earlier, triage, medicate, and educate folks. Start with the greet and screen, and then the form distribution. And then dispense. So this is just a simple operation. They come in the door, we give them the forms to fill out, we dispense the medication, and they're out of the door. For the next slides, I'm going to go over some of the staff responsibility. So pod command staff, the responsibility. So that's probably the pod manager. He will direct all the dispensing operation. Will coordinate with partners. So if there is a need, there is an issue, he needs to call the school or the church that they're doing the dispensing. So he's the one who'll be responsible of that, and then communicating with HDOC. HDOC is the actually health department operation center where all the decision makers will be there, or the EOC. The EOC is the Emergency Operations Center at the state level. So will be constant communication if they need more medication, if the pods is they're closing the shift. They said they're going to be at 12, but all people gone through and they're going to be finished in 10 hours. All this communication is going to be between the local, where the pods, to the health department, and to the state. And that another responsibility, they will act as resources for pod staff. As I said earlier, this is the right person to go to if you have any questions or there is any issue. And then they manage small scale incidents that occur during the dispensing operations. So they're the one to go to for any problem, anything that happens not going well. And then they ensure the safety of the staff, the volunteers, and the clients. The unit leaders or supervisors, their responsibility will be the safety and welfare of their staff, overseeing the operation of that unit, and giving briefing and updates to the staff. They ensure the staff receive equal breaks and rest. and they look for any exhaustions, and then they ensure staff record their times appropriately. So unit leaders, these are the one here. I'm gonna go back, so you'll see. So these, we call them supervisor or we call them unit leaders. So I'm gonna go back and continue. All right, so these are their responsibility. Either we call them, as I said, unit leader or a supervisor to that unit. And the greeter and screener, they're self-disciplinary. Their responsibility is to greet the clients, take temperature and symptoms. That was happened also during COVID. Direct visual ill individual to the healthcare system, meaning if they feel like somebody's sick, they can tell them, hey, there's a nearby hospitals, or they contact the EMS to come and pick them up. And then address needs such as physical, if somebody needs some language services or somebody disabled, they're the one who will be at the door, making sure that getting inside safely. And if they need languages interpreter, they reach out to the appropriate folks to get them an interpreter. The form distribution and review unit, the responsibility normally record in before handing out the screening form, then hand out the form for each client, answer the client questions, review the form, and record when they leave, and then monitor for clients if they need any additional assistance, like language services or whatever. So basically, they're the one making sure the forms are filled correctly. They've been handed to the right people answering those questions. For those folks, if you're gonna be in this position, make sure that you look at that form. If you have any questions before you start, ask the appropriate folks if you have a question. And the dispensing unit, basically, they give the medication or the vaccine. They review the screening form, again, just double checking everything. And then if it's a medical part, they administer the vaccine. If it's pills, they give the pills out. And also they record the time in and out. The flow control unit, the responsibility to guide clients through the pod, direct clients with outstanding questions, prevent arriving clients from entering the pod through exit doors. They kind of in charge of maintaining the flow for the whole pod, and then address also needs such as physical, quantitative language services. All right, so now it's the end of the day. It's been a 12-hour shift. Now we want to, all people have gone through, everything is good. We're trying to close. This is when we call it demobilization of pod. At the conclusion of the pod, each pod manager will secure if there is any SNS inventory left. They will make sure to notify the team leaders that we just talked about this is the time to demobilize, because sometimes they can demobilize early ahead of time. It depends. Maybe they run out of vaccines or whatever the issue is. Maybe it's raining. They can't have people outside. So there's some changes and they needed to demobilize the pod. Team leaders, what they do, they will hold debriefing with their team just to discuss success, areas of improvement, and if there's any strengths or things, to celebrate. And then general pod staff, they will assist with the pod facility in demobilizing and setting up the pod. There might be another shift coming after the next day, so they might be cleaning up, setting up for the next shift coming. All right, so these are just safety consideration that we tell people, obviously to call 911, inform your ICS, which is the incident commander, supervisor, and safety officer for any injury or safety issue. And then everyone has a role. So look for if you feel people are tired or exhausted, or just check for want to take care of each other. And if you see something, definitely say something. So the pod safety and success, it's in your hand. We all work together to make sure it's a smooth operation, and it's the responsibility of each person. And all right, that's actually conclude my slides. I don't know what I have the time, but happy to answer any questions.
So we did have a couple in the chat.
Okay.
Let's see. The first one is, can the same person have multiple roles in the pod personnel?
Always. That always happens.
Yes.
Short is because the shortage of staff, So yes, be prepared to play wear multiple hats and play multiple roles too. They might
Absolutely.
start, yeah, you might start the shift as a greeter. By the end of the shift, you might be doing something else. So just be flexible, adaptable to the needs. Yep.
Yeah. And you all probably, those of you that were, involved in testing, probably noticed that we use almost all of this functionality when we open POTS or points of testing, very similar. Which pod would a therapeutic fall under? Some therapeutics you might not want to give to people who are healthy, but the therapeutic window is too small to wait for them to get a test at their pharmacy or healthcare provider.
So for those, these are probably smaller incidents, and we know that jurisdiction or that particular population got affected. So we make sure to vaccinate if there's vaccination to all that affected area. Like for example, radiation. If an incident for radiation, instead of a chemical, we know that affected population. We make sure that take care of everybody, and we'll be on hands on deck. So even if there's testing is not available, we make sure to take care of people, and then we come back and test after. If that's answered the question.
Does the SNS now stock types of supplies needed for testing, which was a major issue with COVID?
Yes. Yeah, they do.
Mhm.
But it's
Who is
still
in charge?
during, yeah, I
Oh,
just
go
want
ahead.
to
No,
add,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's still during a public health emergency such as COVID, they're always going to be short supplies. Hopefully, we'll never have something like that because it was not just hitting us, it was hitting the whole world. So everything was stopped. People were not going to these factories. So, so it was an issue worldwide. And hopefully, as I said, we learned during COVID our lessons, and there's plans and things that on the way to make things better and more available. Knock on wood if that happen again, but hopefully nothing like COVID again.
Who is in charge in the pod to sign you off to be able to give an injection?
So
I
it's
can,
normal. Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
I was
It's
gonna say,
fine.
I can take that as far as our MRC, the way that we ran it during COVID. Typically, the nurse manager, who was the sort of nurse on staff, or there is also the ability for MRC volunteers who are vaccinators who have been given the okay to be then signer offers. That's not a real word, but
Hmm.
yeah. So yes.
Yeah. And just to add, during COVID, they were already like people when they sign up as volunteers, we check their credentials, we make sure, and then we give them the okay to be vaccinated. So we even assign the role in the system that they could be a vaccinator. So when they being called, the unit leaders will know this person can be a vaccinator, and you will know too because we'll train that person. I'll make sure that assign that role to that person.
Mhm.
And there was a rather relaxation of laws. You've noticed that, I'm sure some of you. During emergencies, the governor, the health commissioners, has the right to waive some. Like some people who were retired, their license were not activated within maybe a year or so. They were able to come back as vaccinators, for example. So they relaxed some of the laws that we have during regular time. During COVID, when there is a declaration, there is a lot of things can be relaxed, and we allow more people maybe to vaccinate.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
vets, for example, vets, they were able to vaccinate as well during COVID. No
Yes, and
problem.
vaccinator training does occur beforehand, but then there within Virginia MRC there is an actual hands-on. You have to demonstrate that you can vaccinate, and then you're signed off. So once your credential is good and your training is there, then you go and you do your demonstration, and then you are good to go.
Yes,
Is
thank
there
you.
a formulary on how long medications can be used after the expiration date?
Yeah, there is, and it's the FDA. So that's an FDA thing. They have a formality. They know what is in the stockpile. They work with CDC and ASPR.
Yes, training and demonstrate clinical competency. That's exactly right. Any